in the lawsuit that literally can change the real estate industry, you've got now some of the defendants that are in disagreement. So if you're not familiar with the commission class action lawsuit, let me quickly update you on what that is, and then I'm going to spend some time giving you an update what's going on with this case. And so the lawsuit is all about, and it is a class action lawsuit now, but the case is class action means that there's 500,000 homeowners in Missouri that are looking to be reimbursed for $1.3 billion in commissions that they paid to buyer's agents in the past 8 years, plus potential damages that could be totaling of $4 billion. So that's what the suit is about. The suit is these sellers that are upset that listing agents offered a commission or being forced to offer a commission with inside the MLS rules. And now it's a massive, massive case. And so, I mean, if you're in real estate and you don't know and you're not following this case, I think that it's worth your attention, because if this case goes through, in other words, if the plaintiffs of this case win the case, it will change the entire dynamic of how real estate commissions work in the United States. It's going to change everything. And so I have been paying close attention to this thing since it came out in 2019, because it will change our entire business model. So here's what's going on with the case right now. All right. So there was a 3-week trial that was set for February. However, you have some of the defendants, Realty, which is now calling themselves Anywhere. They're like, hey, let's postpone this thing. And NAR was like, dude, we want this. Like, we've been prepping for this. Let's get into this because we feel like we can win this case. And they're on the same team as Realty and NAR, Keller Williams, Remax. They're all named plaintiffs in the lawsuit. And Realty, which again is now called Anywhere, postponed the case, and the judge ruled in their favor to postpone it. Now, the question is, well, why in the world would they do that when all the legal teams of all these major real estate firms are set for that trial in February of 2023? Here's the thing, and this is a massive, I kind of understand why Realty would do this, because there's an appeal that potentially could take the lawsuit out of a courtroom and put it into arbitration. And so if that appeal, if a judge rules in their favor, that is monumental. And I cannot express how big that would be for the real estate industry if that's the case. Because Realty is saying, well, listen, if these 500,000 homeowners are filing this class action lawsuit because of their issue with buyer agent compensation, we have to then look at the contract to which they agreed to in the first place. And here's the key thing, and you know this as a real estate agent, every listing contract has an arbitration clause that the seller signs, that if there is any issue that arises out of the transaction, that it doesn't go to a court, it goes to arbitration. Why? Because arbitration moves a lot faster. It's a lot easier to navigate that in the legal system. And so Realty, I should call them what they're called now, Anywhere, is saying, well, let's not start this trial, this class action lawsuit, as a trial in a courtroom. Let's wait to see what the judge says on the appeal to put this whole thing into arbitration. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's massive. I don't know why you would want to rush it into court. If there was an option for you to arbitrate versus go to court, you want to go to arbitration every single time. And so the judge that is on this case ruled in their favor. So that trial is going to be postponed. So we'll see what's going to come later in 2023. Now, here's the thing. The way in which I look at this case is, my opinion is this. I think it's going to be very difficult, very difficult for the plaintiffs to win this suit and change the real estate industry. And here's why. Every single seller that is named in this class action lawsuit, all 500,000 of them, signed a listing contract, outlined them agreeing to pay a listing broker and its agent to market and to sell the home. They agreed to pay the seller the commission, which is 100% negotiable. And at that listing agent or listing broker's discretion, able to use the funds the seller agreed to pay them in any way that would result in them selling the house. And the key thing is, if they agreed to 6% and the listing agent was the one that procured the buyer without there being a buyer's agent on all of those transactions, in my opinion, there would be no lawsuit, because the seller's issue isn't with how much they agreed to pay as much as it is, well, wait a minute, we agreed to pay X amount, and now that some of that money is going to another agent, not our our own agent, now we all of a sudden have an issue with it? In other words, a seller in a listing contract agrees to pay a commission that is 100% owed to who? The listing brokerage. That listing brokerage and listing agent then agree to compensate another agent if that agent were to bring a buyer. But the sellers already agreed to the total commission. So if it's 6% and the listing broker says, well, I'm going to try my best to sell this thing on my own, because obviously I'm incentivized financially to do that. And if I do, I'm entitled to that full 6% commission. But listen, I'm going to also market this property on my seller's behalf to all the other agents in the marketplace that might have a more qualified or a buyer that is willing to pay more than maybe what I can produce on my own. And as a result, I will pay that agent half of the commission the seller agreed to pay me. That's why I don't think that these plaintiffs are going to win this, because the sellers have agreed to do that up front. Now, let's talk about what if the plaintiffs win? And I want to give you my take on this. There are downsides and upsides to everything. All right. So let me give you first and I think about this because I think it's important, because if the plaintiffs win this case, like I said, the entire landscape of our industry will be different. So the downsides, if the plaintiffs win, and again, another reason why I don't think they will, but if they do, buyer's agents are going to have to pay their own agent. And that by itself has some implications with lending and cash out of pocket and all that stuff. And can you finance it? No. Can you roll that into the mortgage? And all of those implications become one issue. The bigger issue that I find it very interesting if the plaintiffs win is that in a world where buyer's agent compensation is no longer comes from the sellers, and the sellers are only compensating their agent to represent them, most likely it's going to put buyers in a situation where they're like, I don't know if I want to pay a buyer's agent to open the doors for me. Maybe this is already happening right now. I'm just going to go directly to the listing agent. And that is a bad place for buyers to be. And so if you have all these entities that are making the argument, well, hey, why are sellers paying the buyer's agent? The consequence of that, the unintended consequence of their exact argument that they're trying to make, actually could backfire. We call that the Cobra effect. And all of those entities that are supposed to be protecting the consumer that are being brought into this case, how is that better for the consumer to go unrepresented, to work with the opposing real estate agent who is a fiduciary to the seller, negotiate against them, which is supposed to be the protected class? That's the part that I don't know. It's going to have to come up in the lawsuit or in the trial at some point. That if I'm arguing on one hand to say, well, we want to protect the consumer. Okay, cool. Well, how does the buyers, in this case, the consumer that is purchasing the home, how is it for them to go unrepresented to work with an agent because of your lawsuit? That agent now is negotiating against them, working directly only for the seller. How is that better for the buyer? And so those are some of the downsides. Let's talk about the upsides. If the plaintiffs win, here's the thing. I think this is going to be great for listing agents, which is what I believe in. And I think this is going to be great for sellers. It's going to be great for listing agents because really nothing changes for a listing agent. We go and secure a listing. The seller agrees to compensate us to sell the property. And in most cases, we're co-oping with another agent. So our compensation probably doesn't get affected at all. Because if we get a 3% commission instead of a 6% commission, because there's no buyer's agent commission, because buyers are going to pay their own agent, number one, our compensation doesn't get affected. That's number one. And then number two, we have all the buyers coming to us to purchase the home. So what I could probably do as a listing agent is have maybe 1 or 2 open houses per week, have all the buyers come during that period of time, which is much better for the seller instead of having them have their home open 7 days a week, always ready for showings, which is very stressful for most sellers. I could say to the seller, hey, Mr. Seller, we're only going to have this thing open on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Outside of that, the other 5 days of the week, you can live normally. And that's when I'll show the property. All the buyers go through me. And then I have almost bidding situation where this is the only time you can see the house. So if you want this house, we create a lot of leverage that way with buyers and a lot of urgency with buyers. This potentially is better for the seller, better for the listing agent to have more control over the process of selling of real estate. And maybe that's what the plaintiffs want to have happen. And so if it were to happen, I think it'd be great for sellers, great for listing agent, bad for buyers, bad for buyer's agent. That's the way I see it. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Let's open this discussion in the comments. I'll hang out for, about an hour and a half after I upload this onto YouTube. We'll have some dialogue about this lawsuit. I want to get your opinion, counter arguments, and get your thoughts.